7 teams currently have an active winning streak of at least 4 games heading into Week 11, led by the Eagles and Saints, who have each won 7 in a row. 4 of those teams are facing each other this week as the Titans and Steelers go for a 5th straight win tonight in Pittsburgh, while on Sunday the Cinderella Rams take a 4-game win streak into Minnesota, with the Vikings looking for their 6th straight win. We'll take a look at both huge games, including every other Week 11 matchup, as OFN NFL Preview with Tony Mejia on the Ourlads Football Radio Network starts now. All right, thanks for tuning in to OFN NFL Preview for Week 11 in the NFL with Tony Mejia, independent sports columnist and exclusive handicapper at VegasInsider.com. So, Tony, I think now is the time where we get serious. The last couple of weeks, we've gone through the mid-season report and take a look at our preseason and second half of the season futures. So this is a good time to always ask this question when we open up the show, and that is whether or not you're still going to go with the Patriots and the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I made the decision that I would, but we'll have to see how they handle Richard Sherman's loss, because it's going to be a factor. You know, they've had Earl Thomas banged up, Cam Chancellor's banged up, so now you're facing the Falcons on a Monday night. So if they can recover and beat a team like that, and they have a really good chance to do it, then they deserve to remain in that spot where I thought they'd be. And they're getting offensive linemen help back. Mm-hmm. It should be better by the time we're talking in a month. So, it's still not all is lost, but I certainly considered it at least moving New England into winning that game, because that's Seattle actually as my champion. So definitely a big hit on Thursday night last weekend.
Well, Seattle is, I think they're actually, their numbers aren't bad right now for a Super Bowl championship team to win it all. They are at 14-1. Patriots are at 3-1. And the Raiders are still 50-1, and that was your that remained your top sleeper. That was your top sleeper team from the past couple of weeks. So are they still your sleeper team?
Yeah, I mean, they have to be by default. Even if they lose in Mexico City to the Patriots, things aren't lost. They can still run off, 5 of 6 and get to 9 and 7. So it's not like this is a must win. Now, if they do beat the Patriots, and there are some issues New England's going to have to solve. To walk through that door and get through this game, then I become a huge believer in there, because who can you buy? The Buffalo Bills, who are so confident in their quarterback situation that they're situated sixth and make a move, or the Ravens, who I don't believe in. So Raiders by default.
Okay, well, this is still, even though we are into Week 11, keep in mind that if your team out there, your favorite team, is under 500. Do not fret, because as long as they're a game under 500, a couple of games under 500, you might have to sweat a little bit. But last year, there were 2 4-5 teams, the Green Bay Packers and Pittsburgh Steelers. Both went on not only to the playoffs, but the conference championship games. So any team sitting out there at 4-5, all is not lost. And that, of course, does include the Oakland Raiders. But let's go ahead and get started with tonight's game, Tennessee and Pittsburgh. And right now, I mean, we pretty much have known for the last few weeks that the Steelers are going to be the team out of the North. And who knows, they may even represent the AFC when it's all said and done. And Tennessee, it's starting to look more and more likely because of Deshaun Watson's injury and with Luck not coming back. And even though the Jags are looking like a potential playoff team, you would have to think that Tennessee's looking pretty good, at least as a playoff team, thanks to their 4-game winning streak, coinciding with Mariota getting back and healthy. All of those wins, by the way, in that 4-game winning streak have been tight. They have won actually their last 3 games by a total of just 10 points.
And mostly against bad teams.
And yes, that's true.
Exclusively, really, if you want to nitpick.
That's okay. You can do that.
So
they did beat Seattle at home, though.
The Bengals and the Ravens are okay, but bottom line is they're under 500, and the other 2 they took out, are really bad football teams. So, yeah, this is a show-me game for Tennessee tonight. The odds makers take is that they considered moving it to 6.5 for a little bit. I think it moved at some point.
Okay.
And then it's pretty much settled at the 7 that it's open. So, if you're gonna take the point, you're gonna take the points. You get a full touchdown for Tennessee. If you're gonna lay it, they're not cutting you any corners with a half point out in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about. I think if I take the game, I'm taking Tennessee. Not sure. I'm not going to go with them to win the game, but I think at 7, I feel pretty good they keep it within a score. I mean, Pittsburgh just 1-4 against the spread this year as a favorite by 5 or more points. They've also had both of their losses this year when they were favored by more than 5 points to Jacksonville and to Chicago. Of course, the Jacksonville game against another Southern team at home. Matter of fact, the only time they've covered this year when they were favored by more than 5 was that Minnesota game, which was Case Keenum's first start way back on week 2. So Pittsburgh, and of course, they weren't exactly making themselves look good last week with that performance following the bye. You're willing to give him an excuse there because of the bye. Dick LeBeau is on the other sideline, so there is a storyline there with Tennessee and their defensive coordinator, who was a longtime Steeler defensive coordinator, including winning some Super Bowls. So good game tonight. Should be a good game tonight. Do you need to see anything in particular from Pittsburgh moving forward at this point? I know we still have a lot of time left to lead you to believe and get you more confident that they can beat the Patriots if they have to match up with them in the playoffs?
I mean, it's going to come down to Todd Haley's play calling. We've seen that manifest in a horrible red zone percentage. I think they're 31st. In putting together scoring drives that don't result in field goals. So the fact that they can execute to get down the field with all the weapons that they have, and lately Roethlisberger has done a decent job of trying to keep them all happy, getting Le'Veon Bell off, even though his running game has struggled some, incorporating Juju Smith-Schuster, getting Martavis Bryant to the point where he's actually trying out there instead of going through the motions. There are good things to focus on, but and you can also say, if you want to be a Steeler apologist or a Haley apologist, that a lot of their work in all these tight games has come on the road, and it's just more natural to be conservative in those situations. But what Roethlisberger and that offense was able to do last week in rescuing that game is proof that they're capable of more. So I'd like to see more. I'd like to see more out of both of these teams. I mean, I think Tennessee, for them, this is a proving ground game. And for the Steelers, it's all right to flex the muscle against a team you might run into down the road in the AFC playoffs.
All right, now let's go with the what I think is the marquee game of Sunday, and I don't really think anybody should think otherwise, and that is the Rams and the Vikings, the 2-7-2 teams. Too bad that this game wasn't on some sort of a primetime situation, but nobody really would have thought that in the beginning of the season, so we understand why it is where it is. Maybe this, because we are getting close to flex weeks, aren't we? Aren't we getting close?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So hopefully when this opportunity comes about again, maybe when the flex weeks come, we'll see a matchup like this on prime time if necessary. Anyway, Minnesota's got the game. Don't forget also on Thanksgiving. They got to go to Detroit on Thursday, and that could be a huge game, especially if Detroit wins like most people would think is possible since they're a favorite this week, or probable since they're a favorite. Vikings, as I said at the open, have won 5 straight. They've covered 4 straight. The Rams have won 4 straight, covering all 4 by a 144-41 margin. So they just continue to beat up everybody. They're also 2-0 this year as a dog. Which they are in this game. 2-point dog. They beat the Dallas Cowboys on the road. They beat the Jags on the road. Case Keenum goes up against his former team. Keenum was the starting quarterback last year for the Rams until Jared Goff took over. And, of course, that's worked out for both teams. I like Minnesota in this game. And the main reason I like Minnesota is because of the fact that if Keenum, he doesn't have to play like last week. But if he just has a good game with their defense, being at home, I'm a little bit surprised, to tell you the truth, that they're only a 2-point dog. That's a lot of respect that Vegas is showing the Rams. They're a good team. We like the Rams. But I mean, I like the Vikings too, and Case Keenum is starting to play like a real starting quarterback. So I'm not sure why I wouldn't go with the Vikings here.
It's been a theme to somewhat poo-poo the Vikings with Keenum at the helm. I mean, I think it was going to start with Bradford too until he opened eyes and had that great debut, and then obviously he goes down the next week. With it being announced an hour before kickoff. So the fact that the Vikings have been so resilient, a credit to them. But I don't think that the books have really bought in. They were a 1-point road. A dog at one point, and then a favorite in Washington, which I thought had the most line value last week. And so it's been a prevailing theme. I think we do see Teddy Bridgewater probably next 3 weeks. So maybe that comes as a result of Keenum, costing them a game. He's done it before.
Okay.
And Bridgewater clearly passing him in practices. And I think for the Rams, this is a huge opportunity for Goff to get something done at one of the toughest places to play in that new stadium they have in Minneapolis. And, he's clearly got the weapons to get it done. So fun game. I agree with you. The best of this week.
All right. Yeah, I mean, look, we've talked about not knowing if we could trust Case Keenum from week to week. We're still not completely sure that that's the case, but I think at this point now, he's started enough games and they've won enough games, and then he played such a good game last week that I think instead of – see, I'm looking more towards the – and I don't know. I mean, does he really have to keep having games like last week in order to maintain his job? I guess we just don't want to see are just bad games and games that make us go, yeah, that kind of looks like the old Case Keenum. I think if he could avoid that, and like I said, even if he just plays okay, which is fine as long as they win games and he doesn't throw them away, I don't see why that he wouldn't be the starting quarterback moving forward. It's just getting too late in the season to turn it over to Bridgewater unless he really has a couple of bad games.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to him. But if you're putting most of the burden on your defense, then yeah, he can't be working against you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're clearly seeing Bridgewater and his talent outshining him every day, yeah, you don't want to make a decision, say week 13 or 14, but your options may be that the team itself is calling for it because they're seeing it too. I'm a big believer in Bridgewater. I think he gets back into that starting lineup before the season ends.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, though, because if Case Keenum does wind up starting the rest of the year, and let's say they win a playoff game, get to the championship game, and he does okay, what do you do at Bridgewater? I mean, do you go, okay, yeah, we're still all in on re-signing Bridgewater and bringing him back for sure, and then what do you do with Keenum? But yeah, I mean, I think there'd be a lot of other teams kind of putting their hands up and wanting Teddy Bridgewater on their team if anything happened with Minnesota.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, as far as Keenum is concerned, he's your Jeff Hostetler in this situation.
Yeah,
so.
Sure. That's true. All right. Next up, let's talk about the Patriots and the Raiders, the game in Mexico. And the Patriots are kind of on cruise control right now. They've won 5 straight. This is the other team that I did not mention at the Open that's had a winning streak of more than 4 games. They've also covered 3 straight and 4 to 5. They've won all 5 of their games away from home this year, covering 4 to 5. The only game they didn't cover was that Jet game, which they just never seem to cover on the road. Oakland, meanwhile, coming off the win against Miami and then the bye. By the way, they get Denver at home next week. So that just shows you what a monstrous game this would be for the Raiders. If they could figure out a way to beat a team like the Patriots after beating the Chiefs. And by the way, let's not forget that they were a dog in that game against the Chiefs, and they should have been when they lost that game. And then we all of a sudden couldn't figure out how they lost to the Bills the next week as badly as they did. Rebounded, played a bad team like the Dolphins, took advantage of it, went into the bye, and now here we are. And if they're going to be a team that can actually maybe surprise, and maybe that 50-1 actually looks pretty good, then they don't have to necessarily win this game, but play them well. I mean, have a good game. Have something close to that Chief game, even if you come out on the losing end, because the AFC 6 spot's going to be wide open for a while.
Yeah, I think this is a spot where they almost have to treat it like the Chiefs game. You're not going to stop the Patriots. And one thing I was concerned about is New England playing altitude in consecutive weeks. Is that but the way they throttle Denver, it almost alleviates itself. And then it becomes all right. I think the Raiders will be better. It's more of a game that they can hang in without the need for home court support, home field support. So they've got to win a shootout. They've got to expose New England's early deficiencies, and at this point they have not really been tested in the past few weeks given the quarterbacks they've played. So they could be vulnerable to Carr and that offense.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a 7-point spread for the Patriots. That is right where it should be. I guess if I'm going to take that game, I'm taking the Patriots. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't take the Patriots at this point in time if the spread is one score. But we'll see. Oakland may not be a bad upset play. I mean, you're probably getting somewhere about plus 250 on the money line against the Patriots in that one. So, and the atmosphere could be pretty crazy. I mean, they seem to show up for those games, and this should be a pretty wild scene down there.
I would think that the Raiders are going to have they're mostly going to be Raiders fans.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, that should help.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's possible. You just know that Brady's going to show up. That secondary is terrible. Conley officially goes on IR, so he's been lost. He's going to dissect them. Carr just has to answer and hope a bounce goes here or there, and they're in the game to try to win it late.
Yeah, it's as you said, if they're gonna win this game, it's gonna be in the 30s. Okay.
Absolutely.
Monday night. Now, this is a big game for Atlanta. This game, I think, tells us a lot about where exactly this team is, because they have won 2 out of 3. Now, was the Cowboy win more likely because no Smith, no Elliott, and then all of a sudden no Lee? You take those guys out, and I don't care. Dallas isn't beating 80% of the teams in the league. That's just that those are their superstars. So you take those guys out, and they're going to look as bad as they did. But was that what it was, or has Atlanta turned some sort of a corner as well? Well, we'll find out, because this is a very tough road situation for them. A little bit surprised that Seattle's only a 2-point favorite. Very similar to Minnesota. Kind of surprised it's only 2, showing a lot of respect for Atlanta, considering Seattle has won 5 of their last 6 games, considering they're the home team. We don't know if Dwayne Brown's going to play, so it's not like he's not going to play. Right now it appears he'll be a game-time decision. We don't know about Chancellor. Apparently they do get Earl Thomas back, but yes, Richard Sherman's out for the year, and going up against Julio Jones, that's I can see that being an issue. But then again, it's not like the Falcons, even against Dallas, it wasn't like they reminded us of last year's offense. It was the defense that dictated that game. So I don't know. I mean, I probably would lean towards Seattle in this one, to tell you the truth. But if Atlanta can pull this out, then maybe they'll start to gain some more confidence, and maybe we'll need to really keep an eye on them moving forward.
I know Devontae Freeman hurts their cause, and it's to me it's a pick'em game. I mean, you're essentially giving the Seahawks their home court edge
home number, yeah,
as props.
Yep.
So it's how healthy can the Seahawks be? How decent can that secondary be? The rookie out of UCF, Shaquille Griffin, who was strong early, he's banged up too. So that's at the wrong time. They had to sign Maxwell, who's a retread at this point. Lane, who they traded, is back with the team, because he failed the physical. So that's fortunate for them, because he's elite in their system. Now he's going to have to play a whole lot. So yeah, I mean, look, it's a situation where you see what the growth has been in the Sark Falcons offense, because you're going up against a defense that at least knows what they're doing, even if they lack the personnel to get it done.
And keep in mind too, it is there is a tiny little bit of a revenge situation here for Seattle, getting beat up in the divisional playoff game in Atlanta. So there is that as well. And look, we are going to find out. This is a good opponent to find out, though, too, with Seattle, how much they are going to miss Richard Sherman. So,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
is this a Russell Wilson game? Is this just a game where Wilson puts the whole team on his back?
I think so. That's the
That's
the reason why I would pick Seattle in this spot, because look, if they were a 4 or 6 point favorite, something, then I'd be like, maybe. But I mean, this is basically a pick 'em, and because of that, I think people are starting to wonder about Seattle a little bit with Sherman going out, and I kind of like Seattle in those kind of spots.
We'll see if they respond.
All right. By the way, Seattle at San Francisco next week, so if they do lose, they'll be able to get a win back going. And same thing with Atlanta, because they'll be hosting Tampa Bay next week. So whoever loses this game will get a win back next week. So this is Monday Night Football. That's a good one. And I'm sure we'll all be tuning in. Next, let's go with the Sunday night game. And we thought maybe if the Cowboys were healthy and had beaten Atlanta, that this would have been even bigger. But now all of a sudden, with Tyron Smith looking like he's not going to play now this week again, and look what happened without him last week, eight sacks. And look, we talked about this at the very beginning of the season, that this was not the offensive line from last year. That, yes, they have 3 outstanding linemen, but they had 2 major issues. And then when you take out one of those outstanding linemen, now you've got 3 big issues. This is why they got destroyed last week. And the Eagles and Jim Schwartz with the bye week, I'm sure they were loving the film that they saw against Atlanta. I think Dallas is in big trouble. You've got Bryant not 100%, even though he'll play. But the Sean Lee injury, I mean, I haven't heard anything there. That can't be good. We know how important he is for their defense. The Eagles, meanwhile, are just the hottest team in football. They've won 7 straight. They've covered 6 straight. It's a 3-point spread. That's basically a win. Yeah, I mean, come on, Eagles. What are we doing here?
Just go road money line, though. I don't like laying 3 points on the road. If you're just looking to get out of there, you sometimes play for the field goal late. You sometimes win by only 2.
Okay.
So I would have had Big Boy up and.
Would you want to parlay it then?
What is it, like 140, 150?
Would you parlay it then before you would take the money line? Because remember, it's a Sunday night game.
Decrease risk.
Yeah, it's a Sunday night game, though. You can take an early game and mix it with the Sunday night game, and if you lose the first end of the parlay, you still got the straight bet later.
Yeah, but you have to decide on what that is. But certainly, yeah, that's a good option. The Eagles should win this game, and unlike past years where you expect them to do something, this year they've gotten it done.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We expected maybe a letdown in San Francisco, instead they went out and handled business.
Yep.
They continue to just take care of it. Now you come off a bye week, so you get Jay Ajayi even more incorporated after his arrival. So definitely a good spot for Philly.
Yeah, and I'm also the other reason why I really like Philly in this spot. I mean, look, the only reason that I would be hesitant is coming off the bye. As hot as they were, did the bye, is that going to cause issues? Will it take, like Pittsburgh, will it take them a whole half or 3 quarters to get into the groove? And by then, will it be so close that, the slightest turnover could dictate the game? Or that's the only thing. But other than that, when I see a team playing as good as the Eagles have played all year, and then they are faced with the first most important division game of the season on national TV, I have a hard time believing they're going to fail the test.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree.
All right. By the way, the favorite in the series has won and covered the last 3. The other thing, keep in mind, the Eagles, this is their first road game since Thursday Night Football, October 12th at Carolina. Are you concerned about any of that situation sometimes when teams haven't been on the road for a month?
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely do have to look at those things. But coming off a bye where you get to actually install a game plan with your revamped offensive line, where you really, it's a marathon in the NBA, it's a sprint in the NFL, and so you lose Peters, and you just have to move forward, pick up the pieces, and go execute. And now you had a pause button, and you can get better aligned and on the same page. There is no excuse if they go, and that certainly wouldn't be one that they're not acclimated to the road after a month off of it.
All right. Next up, Washington and New Orleans, and or Narlands. Is that it? Narlands?
Nolan, that's right.
Nolans. Okay, Nolans. Nolans is 7-point favorite over Washington. And as I said last week with the Bill game, and of course I'm going to say it again this week, and I'm just going to keep saying it until they don't cover or they lose, that if you have taken the Saints as much as I have over the last 4 or 5 weeks, then why would you stop now? Especially when they've won 7 straight up and against the spread by a 229-100 margin. They had a franchise best 6 rushing touchdowns last week, 298 rushing yards total. And I mean, look, they are now for the first time this year. I classify them now as a serious Super Bowl contender because the defense continues to play well enough, and they've got the elite quarterback, and that elite quarterback has got a heck of a running game. I mean, you've got all the ingredients that you want for a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And you know, there is the sentiment that you always want to ride the hot hand until it cools, and right now that they show no sign of it. You know, to play contrarian, Washington is my highest ranked 4 and 5 team, even higher ranked than my beloved Raiders. So right. Yeah, I still think that if they get pieces back, you see Cousins is dangerous. Yeah. You see him connecting with Dotson. Jordan Reed is going to play. I mean, they've suffered some hits that they're not going to recover from, but other guys are coming back. So, you know, still dangerous going out to Seattle and pulling out a game. You know, it's still backs against the wall type. You know, you win, you move to 500, and you still have hope over the last 6 games. So, they're a dangerous team, and this is a great test for New Orleans to learn.
Yeah, I also think that a couple of things. One, I think the win for Washington over Seattle should be a good warning sign for New Orleans. I think that'll be something that'll help for them. Also, when a team has been as banged up as the Redskins have, they have dropped 5 out of their last 6 covers. Keep in mind the one win, which was the Seattle win, came from nowhere. The other win was San Francisco over the last 6. And the injuries have just we don't know really who's going to be available or who won't be available by game time. I mean, if miraculously they get back 75 to 80% of their key guys for the game on Sunday, then all right, you know, that'll definitely help them, no question about that. But I don't know. I mean, I just I look at it more like they had to, you know, chalk up their big road shock of the season, and to do it again. Nah, I'm not going to see it. But the only thing I will give them a little bit more chance this week is, we talked about it last week, they just seem to, I don't know why, but I don't know, maybe they're just a better team to go with when they're on the road. I just don't think I want to take them at home.
Yeah, the crowd's certainly divisive with the way they treat Cousins, and it does seem like they have that woe is me attitude that sometimes permeates and affects the players. So yeah, it's not the greatest fan base, and hasn't been for decades.
They've also had to deal with teams like the Capitals and the Nationals dominating during the regular season and getting nowhere in the postseason. So that fan base is damaged, no question. All right, Baltimore and Green Bay, and Green Bay is the home dog in this one. And that, I guess, is, you know, Hundley, and even though he had his best game, not sure many people really believe that is going to mean that he's going to have another good game this week, even though Baltimore had time to prepare, and they've got a pretty good defense. So Baltimore is also playing in a spot where this is it for them. You know, they go into the bye. They're trying to prepare for the rest of the season, knowing that if they're going to make a run, that it has to start here against Green Bay. You win this game, maybe you can have a good second half and compete for a playoff spot. You lose this game, and you're pretty much almost done. So a big spot for Baltimore. Of course, for Green Bay, if they can win another game, then maybe they actually believe that, hey, maybe Hundley can keep this team around, and maybe Aaron Rodgers can make it back before the end of the season, and maybe we can squeak into the playoffs. We get into the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers. Watch out. So a lot going on here. This is a very interesting game to watch. Baltimore just 2-5 though in their last 7. Keep in mind, a lot of those losses though recently have been really tight losses. They've and so there is that, but it doesn't matter here because it's only a 2-point spread either way. The team who wins probably covers. So who do you like?
Well, I like. I don't really have a pick on this. Yeah, I like understanding that the Ravens are probably getting too much of affection on for their defense to go on the road and expect this. Either that or you're fading Hundley, despite seeing some growth from him. I mean, that's all I read on this line. I'm gonna make a pick on this game, but it's gonna be on Sunday based on who's actually playing. But I mean, for the Ravens, they have made some strides in the passing game. Since those miserable Flacco performances, I think a lot of their guys are getting healthier. So it is. It's an elimination game, and if you're getting points at home, that almost seems like the natural inclination. It's almost like why are you giving me the Packers at Lambeau with points against a mediocre team? So lots to digest.
Yeah, this is probably a game I could just completely stay away from myself. I don't know what to expect yet from Baltimore, and don't know what to think about just one win in Chicago. For Green Bay, especially with some of the injuries they still are dealing with. And it looks like Jamal Williams is going to go. And look, it wasn't like Jamal Williams had a great game. So he's a nice running back.
I like him, though.
Yeah, he's a nice running back.
BYU.
He's got to stay healthy, of course. I mean, if he could stay healthy, he could have a good long career in the NFL. So, yeah. But, Balaga's injury, that hurts them. So, yeah,
if I were to tell you either of these teams blew the other one out, you would believe that, right? So I mean, it's almost like one of those.
It's
deciphering who that possibly could be, and that's probably your pick.
All right. By the way, next week both teams play on prime time. Green Bay will be in Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. That was supposed to be an Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger matchup, and Baltimore will be hosting Houston next Monday night. And that was also, well, they didn't know that before the season began, but we were hoping that was going to be a Deshaun Watson matchup. All right.
Well, that could be awful if the Ravens lose this game.
If they lose, yeah, then nobody's going to watch. Yeah. All right. Buffalo and the Chargers, and I guess you can say last chance for the Chargers, even though you kind of felt that last week's loss to the Jags was their last chance, especially the way that they lost. I mean, I'm not sure a team finds more ways to lose over the last 3 or 4 years than the Chargers. We talked about a couple of months ago about how many times this team has lost close games over the last few years. They've lost 5 out of 6 this year by a total of 18 points. That's basically 3.5 points per game. And it shows because they've covered 4 of the last 5 games. But they've only won 3 games all year.
You threw in the towel on Anthony Lynn pretty quickly. I want to give that man a hug. There are some times where there's nothing else he can do. You've got to trust that his running back can hold on to the ball. You've got to trust that his kicker is going to make a field goal, and he's losing all these tight games. If this is a team that, especially with the struggles of the Chargers and the Broncos, is really blowing an opportunity. And I think it's all circumstances, too, between the close losses and the lack of home court advantage. It's got to be a demoralized group.
Yeah. I mean, interesting storyline. Anthony Lynn, as you said, and he comes from Buffalo. So I think there were a lot of people who thought Lynn was going to be the head coach at Buffalo.
Right.
So I don't know what that does. But there is that. There's also Phillip Rivers in concussion protocol, which kind of surprising, but we would expect he would play because he always plays. And also some injuries for Buffalo to keep an eye on. How will Clay play this week after coming back last week? And Glenn, will he play? By the way, the Bills have lost their last 2 by an 81-31 margin. Peterman gets the start. I know a lot of people are freaking out about that, but in the beginning of the season, or actually even right after the draft when they took Peterman, Dan Schonk and I talked about how Peterman was a very good draft pick by the Buffalo Bills. That was a perfect quarterback in last year's draft, considering where the Bills were, since they weren't going to get one of the top guys, to land a guy like Peterman, in the middle rounds was a great move because he's got really good potential. And I said in the beginning of the year that you're going to see Peterman by the end of the year. That's how confident I was that the Bills were going to give him a shot. And I think this is perfect timing because it's good for McDermott. It just shows, this says everything that I've been trying to say about the Jets. Good for them. Even at 5-4, they realize, what are we doing? Let's see what we got here in Peterman. It can't be any worse than what we've got with Taylor, because it's not just like, I mean, they haven't been losing necessarily because of Tyrod Taylor. They've given up 81 points the last 2 games, but it's nice to see that they're thinking about the future.
Yeah, I buy this as a shot in the arm type move before the season slips away from you, because you're still in control technically of making the playoffs. You just have to pull some upsets along the way. And I mean, Peterman had a rather strong preseason. I remember being impressed by him in a couple of games. Yeah, we'll see. I'm definitely not one of those people that is denouncing this move as Tyrod Taylor getting an unfair shake.
No.
But you also mentioned he's not out there giving up a million rushing yards either.
Yeah.
So, we'll see if this affects the team the way that McDermott hopes for.
And look, we're not there at practice, so apparently, Peterman has proven something enough that they feel like, let's give it a try. We gotta try something. By the way,
we'll see how Shady responds to this, because he's had such an uneven season, and then obviously Kelvin Benjamin and Matthews. So, we'll see. Very interesting from that standpoint, this game, because it's almost like you get a decent team to test yourself against with this experiment.
Sure, on the road. Yeah.
It's probably going to hang around if Rivers goes.
Yeah, decent defense, and of course you also that's the thing, is that last week you had Benjamin, you had Matthews, you had Clay, and the passing game still went nowhere. And I know it was only 1 week that they were all together, but still, it's like, all right, well, so Peterman at least has got better options to start with than he would have if he started a month ago. And by the way, the Chargers will be at Dallas on Thanksgiving. So if the Chargers win the game, then that'll be even more important for them on Thanksgiving. And the Bills will be in Kansas City next week. So if they lose this one, they're in big trouble. All right, next up, Cincinnati Bengals and Denver. And boy, Denver. See, I'm still. Let me see. Yeah, let's go. I tell you what, let's go with the Detroit-Chicago game first. Detroit and Chicago is a big game for Detroit for obvious reasons. They're 5-4. They've won 2 straight. They've beaten some bad teams. I get it. Even though the Green Bay game, they're a decent team, but that was still early for Hundley and all that. But impressive nonetheless. They kind of sleptwalked through the game last week and kind of did what Minnesota did in London. All right, do we have to start playing now? Okay, let's go ahead and beat Cleveland and get them out of the way. That's kind of the way I look at what happened last week.
Win and cover.
And cover, yes. Big one. As an 11-point favorite. That's right. 7-1 last 8 versus the Bears, by the way, Detroit. For the Bears, inexcusable to lose last week. I mean, rivalry, getting killed all the time by Aaron Rodgers. He's not there, and you can't beat Brett Hundley. So poo on you. But now they got to try to beat Detroit. Now, the difference is, the main difference, they were a favorite last week. Here, they're a dog, home dog this year. The Bears are 2-2 straight up, 4-0 against the spread.
Yeah, they have been sharp in this spot. To me, I mean, it's a must-win for the Lions, even though it's not, because you almost have to build your Thanksgiving game into a fever pitch, and really, yeah, I mean, you can make tremendous inroads in the coming 110 plus hours if you pull off consecutive wins against division teams. I mean, all of a sudden you got everybody believing. And again, Stafford's been great this year for the most part. So then I believe too.
Yeah, especially if you look at it, that would be beating all 3 of your division opponents in the last month. So yeah, that could change everything for Detroit and get them going as a serious playoff contender with Matthew Stafford at quarterback, with that big Minnesota Thanksgiving Day coming up. By the way, the last 4 games in this series has been decided by a total of 13 points. The Bears have covered 4 to 5 against Detroit, even though, again, as I mentioned, they've lost 7 out of 8 in the series. Next up is Arizona and Houston, and the loser of this game is definitely out. And that's because the NFC is better than the AFC, even though Arizona's a game up on Houston, even though we know Houston and Arizona are probably out anyway, because no Carson Palmer and no Deshaun Watson. Boy, Tom Savage has been just downright awful. And I think this team psychologically has got to be just done. We thought they could get blown out last week for that exact reason after the performance against the Colts, and we got what we thought we would get. They're 0-3 straight up and against the spread this year when Deshaun Watson does not start. And they're a 1-point favorite in this one at home against Arizona, who will start playing Gabbert. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, don't be surprised if we see Gabbert. Now, we're seeing him because of Stanton's injury, but the reason why I said that was because I actually liked the way Gabbert played in the preseason. Arians even made the comment about how bad his teams have been, his players and talent around him. I'm willing to give Gabbert a shot here, especially how as bad as Savage has been. I'm willing to go with Arizona in this one.
Yeah, no question that would be the way I'd lean. The Texans were in last week's game for a little while before the bottom fell out against the Rams, and I expected a little more backbone from them, despite all the injuries and all the attrition. So maybe they are spent. And out of buying stock in either of these two, which you'd have to make me,
sure.
I would also lean towards a rejuvenated defense that's a lot healthier than it has been, and then somebody delivering the ball if Gabbert is able to really a good stable of receivers that are getting some space with Peterson working out well. So, I think there's a reason why the Cardinals are such a short dog.
Yeah, and remember we mentioned this last week, and this is still a working trend. Arizona has alternated wins and losses all season. So they lost last week. So
yeah, I don't see this group as one that would quit on Arians, and I like Bill O'Brien too. So I'm surprised by what we've seen, even though I think a lot of that has come from Savage letting them down and letting the offense down.
Yeah, that quarterback position in the NFL means so much. Cincinnati and Denver is the next game. Speaking of the quarterback situation, now here's a coaching staff though that I wouldn't even be waiting for. Honestly, I don't know what John Elway is waiting for. How much more proof do you need every week that they have no idea what they're doing? And then to throw on, I mean, doesn't Elway have to intercede here with Paxton Lynch? Doesn't he? Why am I hearing that Paxton Lynch looks like he's going to be ready to be the number 2 quarterback on Sunday? If he's ready to be the number 2 quarterback, that means he's ready to start. What are you waiting for?
Yeah, I'm really ignorant on the Paxton Lynch situation because I expected a lot more of him, maybe because I saw him closely in the American in UCF's division, and I admired his game in college and how he flopped almost immediately.
Sure.
Where they're saying, "Oh, he doesn't know the plays. Oh, this is really bad." So how much? How it's almost like the Flynn situation. In that you don't know behind the scenes what they're actually seeing, and maybe they're finally ready to be comfortable that in an emergency situation he can actually play, and it's that bad.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I just wow. Yeah, look, practice still is practice, and I'd still at least like to see, and I think they need to see, because Denver's just going to be another team like some of these other teams. There's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. And Denver is going to have to find out. What are they going to decide? Nah, we're going to draft a quarterback. We've already completely given up on Paxton Lynch, even though we haven't seen him for 2 years. Get him on the field. See what happens.
I agree. And I said Flynn. I meant Bryce Petty. But I think Bryce Petty is further along in this race as to who deserves to be out there. Because we saw some progress from him in preseason. With Lynch, we really haven't seen anything.
No. Look, I understand everything that has been said and what we've seen. I get all that. But what we're seeing, bringing back Osweiler, playing him, he's done nothing. They're 0-5 straight up last 5 by a 165 to 68 margin. It's just not good right now. By the way, the dog it's kind of interesting. These two teams have played a lot recently. The dog in this series has won 2 out of 3, covered all 3 the last 3 years. So this is the 4th straight year these two teams have played. Cincinnati is the short 2-point dog, which okay, maybe, but I don't know how. See, Denver's one of those teams that's playing so bad that I don't know how they're favored over anybody outside of the 49ers in Cleveland. So how can I not take Cincinnati in this one? This is one of those games. As much as I don't really like taking Cincinnati, as you know, this is a game I'll take them. How can I think that Denver's going to win a game? They can't even get close to anybody.
Yeah, this is a weird situation. You see that the Bengals continue to invent ways to lose games. So, this is one I'd probably stay away from unless there's some trend or key injury I really like a matchup in. But other than that, yeah, I mean, this isn't one I even want to watch. And I will watch the Gabbard Savage fiasco. But this one, I've lost all hope in both.
By the way, if Cincinnati does win the game, they could find themselves at 5-6 because they'll be hosting Cleveland next week. So that could put them right back in the playoff picture within a couple of weeks. All right, Tampa Bay and Miami. Speaking of games that really, thank goodness Miami's not on national TV anymore. They've lost 3 straight by a 112-45 margin, and coincidentally, those games have all been on national TV. So anyway, they're at New England next week. Tampa Bay, meanwhile, won their first game since October 1st last week and covered their first game since week 1 last week. So leave it to the Jets for that to happen. Everybody wants, of course, to blame the offensive line and the play calling, but we all know the reason the Jets lost. This gotta still, as bad as the Dolphins have played, the Bucs are just a mess. They just got lucky that they played a team that just did not show up. Miami's just got. I don't think they've look. One thing's for sure. Adam Gase is the guy in charge, and he's not going anywhere. We know Dirk Cutter is, and a lot of those players in Tampa Bay they've already checked out. So because of that, it's a pick'em game. If I had to take this game, I'd take the Dolphins.
I think both are guys that can communicate well with quarterbacks, Cutter and Gase, and I do not think they deserve to be NFL head coaches. I mean, you look at the decision the other night not to go for 2 when you're down. An extra point puts you down 17 instead of going for 2 and you can get to 16 and it's a 2-possession game and my 5-year-old can make that determination that it's probably better to be down 2 possessions or at least try to be than just kick a meaningless extra point. So and those situations, I mean, a lot of people that cover that team are real pros and they're very dubious despite them making the playoffs last year as to what direction this team is going. I think there's a lot of whispers there. And then obviously with Cutter, I think we're in agreement that he's got to go, and there's a ton of whispers there in terms of player being upset and really ready for the season to be over.
All right. Well, look, I mean, if they lose to Tampa Bay of all teams, then I would think that maybe some of those whispers would get a lot louder about Gase. So we'll see. I mean, I still I'm not even sure exactly who is running things anyway, or if they got a right direction in Miami. I kind of figured that they were willing to let Gase kind of, be a big shot there, but maybe that's not the case. I don't know.
Can you imagine losing Ryan Fitzpatrick?
No.
And then the Bucks in
a
makeup game and to just completely flush your season down the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
that'll do it.
Somebody's got to go.
Yeah, because to tell you the truth, it is kind of strange. You look at it; it's not like they've got like a ton of crazy injuries, and there is something. And look, we all understand what's happened to them this season. They've had to deal with a lot of stuff, but they were winning games when they were dealing with that stuff. So I'm not sure how that's an excuse for the last 3 weeks. I don't know. Something's not right
I definitely agree. I mean, the deal with the offensive line coach when you have, Pouncey on an offensive line, King, albeit he was injured to start the season, but it still should have been better. You got a defense that at times looked elite, with elite players along the front 4.
They did look like it.
I mean, they definitely should be better than they've looked. Yeah. And it's not a record thing. It's just wow, the bottom completely falls out for this team all the time.
Yeah, the fact that they're 4-5 is nuts. I mean, they don't even play like a 4-5 team; they play like a 2-7 team. So,
Absolutely.
All right, Kansas City and the Giants, 10-point road spread. But to tell you the truth, okay, yeah, I'll give the 10. I got no problem. I mean, come on, the Giants, if they have checked out like no team has checked out before in the NFL. I mean, this team is done. So if they're going to pull out either a win or hanging in there, even to put themselves in a position to backdoor cover, I think is going to be a miracle based on what's going on there. They can't even beat the Niners, who are purposely tanking. So I mean, I'm sorry. Maybe if the Chiefs were on some side of a winning streak and they were overlooking the game, but they've lost 3 out of 4 games coming off a bye. They're in no condition to overlook the Giants. This game will be over by halftime.
It should be. Otherwise, we need to start asking questions about the Chiefs.
Sure.
And I hope we see an Alex Smith that comes out aggressively and takes advantage of his weapons. Because, if he does, he'll be going up against the defense that's obviously, mailed it in. So, yeah, this is a big spot. We all know how well Andy Reid teams do after bye weeks.
That's true.
Proven he's pretty good at it. So,
yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to lay double digits anywhere, it's in this spot.
All right, and then Jacksonville and Cleveland is the last game, and the Jags are a 7-point favorite here. They've won 3 straight, and miracle win they pulled out last week, but that shows you how the things are just changing in Jacksonville for sure. I found it humorous. I don't care if it was in a joking way or whatever, but somebody should have told Blake Bortles, don't be offering advice to anybody. Okay.
What did he say? Well, I know he said something to Kaiser, but I didn't catch it.
Well, he just said, just make sure to throw it to your own team. So again, even if he's just saying it by a joke, off the cuff, just don't even put yourself in that position to offer any quarterback advice. So anyways, they're 7-point favorite in this game. Cleveland's been hanging in there usually for a half or 3/4, so it's not like they've given up. They just aren't talented enough to hang with teams. Kaiser actually played a pretty good game, and then he gets hurt. So he's limited this week, but he's supposed to play, so that's good. I don't know. I mean, sure. Is it possible that Jacksonville, because they're a young team, not used to winning, that they come off that crazy emotional win last week? They go on the road in a game that they're supposed to go, oh, come on, it's winless Cleveland, and then they get caught? I mean, we are talking Blake Bortles. I mean, if Cleveland hangs with Minnesota and with Detroit, then if they hang with Jacksonville, does Jacksonville have what it takes offensively in this spot to come back? Okay, maybe, but we are talking 7 points on the road. It looks kind of easy based on how both teams are playing, but this could be a troublesome game.
Well, I mean, look, I think the spread would be 9 because everybody's in love with the Jaguars defense, rightfully so. I love the fact that Gibson is adding fuel to the fire, calling out his former teammates and the organization that he said gave up on him, and now they were going to come in and put it on you.
Okay,
that's great.
That's good for
but,
Cleveland.
Yeah, he needs Bortles to administer half of that whipping. So
yeah,
and
right.
to his credit, even though he was an abomination the other day in those key situations, he's had some games where he's been actually sharp. So we'll see. Obviously without a top receiver, you're gonna have to make do, but he's made do without Allen Robinson for what, like a month and a half now?
No, that's true. I mean, Lee and Hearns banged up. They are supposed to get D.D. Westbrook back, though, so that could help him out. But, I said this the other day, I think the Jags during the draft or in free agency, because, look, they have done such a good job in personnel the last year or two that they are in a situation where they really don't have a whole lot of major needs to be competitive. We all know they need a quarterback. So that's it. Get a quarterback, and we get that. But what I would also do is at some point, 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, I'd get another running back. Because I want another guy that whenever Leonard Fournette has his moments, that I have a guy I can trust as a really legitimate backup. Because what we're seeing out of Leonard Fournette is exactly what I was afraid of during the draft when we were all talking about Fournette. He's got issues. And a team that is so reliant upon the running game, I can't trust Ivory. No way. Yeldon's not even anybody I even care about. So if I'm the Jags, I'm getting another backup next year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I like Ivory enough, but yeah, you can definitely get that running back room another body that you can trust, no question.
Corey Coleman, by the way, is also supposed to be activated, just like D.D. Westbrook. But Westbrook playing his first game, Coleman coming back since a broken hand week 2. That'll help Cleveland.
Is this a Josh Gordon week or no?
No. Nope.
Next week.
It's I don't know if it's next week. Could be, or in 2 weeks.
It's close.
Is it week 13?
If it's not this week, it's next week.
Yeah, it's coming up. So, but getting Coleman helps as well. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about these Thanksgiving games because we're not going to be on until Friday, correct?
Right.
Okay, so just in advance, what do you think about Minnesota Detroit right now? Just anything from any reason to anything right now to kind of. I mean, of course, it could be a big game as we mentioned if Detroit wins this week.
Yeah, I mean, my only caveat on this is the Lions coming off a loss. If they're coming off a loss to the Bears, I think they're deflated. If they beat the Bears, doesn't matter how, whether they look good or not, I think they'd show up for this game. And I can do this now because I haven't seen an advanced line, but I would put that line if they come in as a winner, as Detroit a 1.5 point favorite.
Okay. Yeah, and with Minnesota, it really all depends also on Keenum. See, if Keenum plays well this week, then I start to get into a situation where I'm starting to see him play too well, too much winning. I'm all in, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I have
And
confidence
his numbers
now
have been great.
Yes. So, but if he plays poorly and they lose, then all bets are off. And like you said, if all of a sudden Detroit wins and Minnesota loses and Keenan doesn't play well, then I'm starting to think Detroit next week. So
no question. They have Stephon Diggs getting healthier, which is obviously key, and Thielen continues to play well. And on the Lions side, Eric Ebron, finally produced another touchdown last week. They went deep to Kenny Galladay, so he's got to be feeling better with that hamstring.
Yeah.
So yeah, this could be a really fun Thanksgiving game. It all depends on really on the Lions winning this week, because I think even if Keenum looks bad, this will also be an extremely attractive matchup.
And the Chargers, as we mentioned at Dallas, could be an important game for the Chargers if they win in the AFC. If they're 4-6, knowing a 5-6 record would put them right there in contention. So, and especially if the Cowboys wind up looking bad to the Eagles in back-to-back weeks, now all of a sudden, you got a Dallas Cowboy team, desperate mode. You got a Charger team feeling their oats. So that could be, at least that's a game that you're okay watching on Thanksgiving. Phillip Rivers. Yeah. But, if the Cowboys stink it up and the Chargers lose to the Bills, then, that's definitely going to take a lot of luster off the game.
We're going to have to resort to sad Jerry Jones memes on the internet to entertain ourselves.
Oh boy, yeah.
That's the case. Because people love their sad Jerry Jones footage. And is that a Romo game?
It's the second game. So what is the first game? Is the NFC? So it's Romo's an AFC guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure.
Yes.
But if
I think
is,
he
that
is.
adds,
yeah, Romo's an AFC guy.
To at least the broadcast.
Yep. That's a Romo game. As long as from what I understand, you get the Fox for the first game, you get CBS for the second game. So yeah, that should be a Romo game. And then nobody is going to watch the night game unless Washington beats New Orleans. So if Washington can beat New Orleans, then all of a sudden at least you've got a Washington slant. Watch out. Maybe they're healthy. It's worth keeping an eye on the Redskins, because the Redskins, if they get healthy and beat the Saints, well, you're looking at a win there. Now the Redskins are all of a sudden sleeper real. But if they lose this week, then nobody's going to tune in for a late night Thanksgiving Day game between Washington and the Giants.
Yeah, you probably would to fade the Giants and collect on 3-team parlays along the day. So
true.
And that'll make Washington a very popular pick, because I doubt anybody is thinking that the Giants are showing up on a holiday for that coaching staff.
No.
And we should see Davis Webb here soon enough, because I think McAdoo has some passive aggressive in him.
All right. Well, heck, what the heck are we waiting for, I mean, seriously. I mean, we just we were talking about the Jets. I mean, I'd be even more. I mean, you got to do something. I mean,
yeah, no, and I think we'll see that. I think they allowed him to break his competitive game streak and all that. But yeah, with no real spark, I guess Shepard got going. It's only a matter of weeks that we'll see that transition.
All right, Tony, I appreciate it. Thanks as always. I won't talk to you until after Thanksgiving, so all my best to you and your family for the holiday, the first holiday of the season, the big one, especially for football, Thanksgiving. So enjoy that, and we'll talk to you after Thanksgiving next Friday.
Likewise. Happy holidays to you and to all.
All right,
Appreciate
man.
It.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. That's Tony Mejia VegasInsider.com, and he's with me each week here to talk NFL on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. By the way, tomorrow, don't forget, we have our college football preview. It's at 2 o'clock, and I'll have on, we'll be talking USC football, get a guest covering USC football tomorrow. So we'll talk the USC Trojans and the UCLA Bruins. We'll also talk about all the other big games going on in college football. So that starts at 2 o'clock on Friday. And then we'll also, by the way, have an interview late tomorrow night. Not late tomorrow night, but sometime tomorrow, talking Missouri football. But the big one is our college football show. That's when we talk all the big games of the week, just like we do here in the NFL. Don't forget, if you have any questions or comments, or if you just want to send us a message, follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. And by the way, our futures are up over at Prime Sports Network for both the NFL and college football. So we've got 3 new teams this week added to our futures report in the NFL, 2 more in college. So thanks for tuning in here to Ourlads Football NFL Preview Week 11 on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. I'm Greg DePalma. For Tony Mejia, we'll see you next time.